You are watching Tech Confessions, created by Amy Lewis and brought to you by VMware.
Well, Cory, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yes. Well, what brought you here to begin with? I hear that you may be a founder.
I am the founder of the Big Data Beard, so bigdatabeard.com. It started out as a blog about 4 or 5 years ago for myself. So my day job was working at Dell EMC as a principal SC focused on big data. And I started doing some things in labs that maybe weren't like something that we needed to share corporately, but I kind of wanted to put stuff out there. So I started the blog, and then over the last couple of years, I've met some really talented people that are better at creating content and more creative, interesting than me. So I asked them, like, why don't you join me and let's do this thing together? So they did. I don't know why yet, but they did, and it's been delightful.
We'll have to get them on the couch and ask them that question.
I think we should. You should ask them how it happened, because I'll be interested to hear their opinions. But so we launched a podcast and about 6 months ago, and the folks from the Dell influencer community asked us to come out and record some podcasts and hang out with them.
So was there an inciting moment that caused you to say, like, hey, actually, this is interesting to me that I want to start my own blog? Was it for career reasons or just something you thought was, what started it?
You know, I think it's because I was learning about big data, and I felt like I was learning things that it took a lot of research to find some things, and you had to spin things up and try stuff and break it, and I didn't feel like there was maybe at the time as many people that were doing some of that, so it was one of those where it was like, hey, if I do this, maybe I should capture it because maybe somebody might find it interesting. And it helped the career, obviously. I mean, it helps from a profile building perspective to have, create content. That's not a normal thing for a lot of engineers and folks that are, more technical to be content creators. So I found a niche, and it's been really good.
Did you always know that you enjoyed writing, or was that something you discovered when it was
No, it's actually funny. I always got this feedback when I was in school, from early school through to college. The feedback was, Cory, you speak very, very detailed, and you tell stories in a really emphatic way, and you write like you're trying to get out of writing. So, so that's been a really big challenge for me, is to actually write more like I talk, because a lot of times I was just really to the point, didn't embellish it very much with things that made it more interesting and storytelling whereas I think just in a conversation I naturally progress that way. So yeah, writing's been a harder thing for me, but it's been a really fun outlet.
That's awesome. So have you integrated some of that storytelling aspect that you had naturally from the way that you spoke into your writing?
Yeah, I think it's always, I think storytelling is the way, it's at the purest form. That's how we communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And that's how I think good ideas become adopted. I think it's how great technology gets acquired and bought and sold. And I think it's it's just the way that people like to be engaged. And so I always try to think about what story am I trying to tell? What's the narrative that when somebody sits down and gives me some amount of their time, whether it's they're reading a blog or listening to a podcast, am I getting something out at the end that says hey, this is really going to be worth somebody's time? So I try to think about it in terms of a story, what's going on in the world that it ties to what's happening trend-wise that we can connect it to, and then hopefully find something that's new and interesting, and then just regurgitating something already out there.
In a different way, no one would ever accuse me of knowing much about big data, but I think of that as being one of the ways that true stories are being told about patterns of the ways people are using different services and technologies. Yeah. Has there been anything that, as you've learned more and more about it, that has been a real aha moment for you, or something that maybe people in your podcast or your blog have really seemed to glob onto?
I think it's true of any technology, whether it's big data or the really in vogue terms today are machine learning and artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of confusion on what that means. But for me, I think the story and the reason why I get excited about big data is because there's this ability to actually achieve something and have a real impact on something that's interesting. And sometimes it's mundane things if you use data effectively, you could run a data center more effectively and save energy or save costs, or that's boring stuff. But then there's things if you can cure diseases, you can solve world problems using old math, new math, but large scale data and processing that's never been available before. And I think that's kind of cool. We're we're in this new age where compute and storage and everything's getting ubiquitous. Data's just coming from everything. I mean, I saw a Bluetooth toothbrush the other day. Literally, it's a toothbrush that you Bluetooth to your phone, to tell you like if you're brushing correctly or not. And I'm like, I mean, how bad are we at brushing teeth that this is where we've gotten? But it's interesting. Like maybe they can, maybe people can learn something. But anyways, I think big data to me is one of those where it's like, there's enough tech and enough innovation happening in that space to where it can keep a propeller head nerd like really, really spinning. But if you really like, if you connect the dots between all this cool tech with outcomes, that's where it gets really interesting. So a lot of times on our shows, we dig into the bits and bytes of the tech, like how does it work, why does it work, how's it different?
Yeah.
But we also get into like, tell me the coolest use cases. Like how is what you're doing helping people? You know, and I like Michael Dell's kind of story about like human progress at a macro is cool. I like seeing how big data is like having real impacts for people.
Yeah. Like tangible philanthropic outcomes.
Yeah.
So you said just a moment ago how big data, it was like this big buzz term a few years ago, and then now ML and AI, I feel like we don't even say the full words anymore, are these big terms that are invading so many other types of technology. Would you say there's any really big misconceptions that the average layman has about what these really are?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that everybody thinks that they're all new is that's the funny part. Because at the end of the day, data science and big data, what started out as big data was, it was how do I deal with storing large amounts of data that's being created in ways that we didn't do before, right? The internet. How do we deal with storing and managing that data and then deriving value from it? Because at the end of the day, like I like Paul Moritz, who's the chairman of Pivotal. And he has a great quote that I literally think about this all the time. He's like, our goal in this kind of big data, and you can apply it to the new machine learning or AI, he said, our goal is to catch someone or something in the act of doing something and affect the outcome. Like that's it. Like, so if we think about like machine learning or AI, it's how do I come up with some amount of software that at the point of a transaction, whether it's somebody buying something, that you can affect what they're buying. It's a machine that's about to go out of service and take a whole production facility down. It's a power plant that's going to go down and take hospitals offline, right? Can I catch something in the act of doing something and affect the outcome? Well, machine learning, that's the whole purpose, right? We're going to use data to train a piece of software or an algorithm, or algo, the cool kids say. We're going to train an algo. That algo is going to end up being a Python script, or it's going to be some code that runs as an API. And then we're going to ask it a question like, does this look like the other stuff? Like, what's the outcome? It's the same thing. So big data is, I think I saw a blog post the other day about like, how are we going to live in a post-big data era? And I was like, man, like that's kind of markety. Like, I feel like a lot of this stuff is just, it's marketing talk. The tech is all the same. The people doing it, they're the same people. Like data scientists, the dudes that were really popular in big data, they're the ones doing machine learning and deep learning. Deep.
I like that idea of it's almost like, what is it, lipstick on a pig? Like it's the same concept.
It is.
Yesterday I was having a conversation with somebody who said there is no cloud, it's just an operational model. I was like, oh.
Yeah,
maybe there's something to that.
I like the cloud. I heard somebody that say something the other day. I was like, cloud. You mean somebody else's computer, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, and I think it's it's true. I mean, the cloud, the people that did it well, that's because they just ran IT better than people that were doing it themselves. So and then they put some margin on top of it, and then hey, we got a business, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
I don't think the cloud's a bad thing, but I think in big data we're seeing less cloud adoption than I think everybody thought. I was actually talking with the CTO and co-founder of Cloudera, a guy named Amr Awadallah, a couple weeks ago at one of the big conferences. And he was like, when we started the company, he said, we called it Cloudera because we felt like it was the cloud era. And I'm like, all right.
I never put that together.
And he was like, yeah, there you go. You learn something new every day. So what he told us, though, is he went to, like, they started talking with their customers, and they were like, we're never going to run this in the cloud. No way. So they were like, we left the name, but we really never went off in the cloud. Now, they've invested in the cloud, has become relevant, but even like his competitor, Hortonworks, their CEO said in an earnings statement that 75% of their customers still deploy on premises. Now, I don't know if it's serverless or not. I heard that's another one. Serverless. Seriously.
I know. I know.
I don't know.
So one question we like to ask on this show, and I am particularly interested in asking you because of some of the different applications you've already mentioned. But what would you say was your software-defined moment?
My software-defined moment probably was, well, I have two. Can I take two?
Please.
Okay, my first one was I realized I made a giant career change when I was about 3 years out of college. And I'd been working as an engineer for a manufacturing company. We designed cutting tools for the machining industry. So if you imagine like a GM has engine plants, right? Well, when they get an engine block, it's a forged piece of material that has to be milled and drilled and made. Okay, so we made the tools that did all that. And I was an engineer out in the field helping companies like GM and others use our stuff. Right? It wasn't software. But my software-defined moment for them was when that company decided to go through an ERP implementation, right? A business software deployment. And so that industry is kind of an aged industry, meaning most of the people that work in that industry aren't in their 20s. They're mostly in the latter part of their career. Because manufacturing it doesn't seem as sexy, I guess, for young kids coming out of school. Did for me. And they were like, so you're 22, you've got to be computer literate. Could you help us roll this software out? And so I ended up being a super user for them for this big SAP deployment. And I was like, well, this is kind of fun. Like, software's kind of cool. And literally like 3 months later, I met some dudes that one owned a consulting company and one was working for a software company. And they were like, wait, so you're an engineer who understands manufacturing and you kind of understand some software. You want to come work for us? And it literally changed my career path, like, completely.
Way.
And that's how I ended up in technology and IT. My family had been in IT, and I literally had been like, I don't want anything to do with like software or hardware. I don't want anything to do with it. I want to go do manufacturing, something different. And then it just came right back around.
So we have that ERP to thank for big data beards.
It's true. All started with just a simple business application for a little American manufacturing company.
And what's the second one?
Well, the second one was kind of fast forward into my career. I ended up coming to work at EMC prior to the Dell acquisition, and I had a customer really struggling with some large-scale ERP applications, and we had a kind of an epiphany when the VBlock technology was first starting out, and we had some really impressive conversations with the VMware team around what their stack was going to do longer term and kind of the vision. And I was trying to get the customer convinced that VBlock was cool, but it was new, so we were talking about it. But when I really started peeling the covers back of what it meant to like layer software in at the factory for modernizing operations, even at that time, I mean, this was heck like 6 years ago, it just blew my mind at how cool it was by having spent some time then deploying applications the old way and seeing it the new way. And it was just, and I think it hasn't changed. Right now I'm interested in what's happening in containers, because in big data, nobody likes abstractions. Like, they're really afraid of them. Like, virtualization, containerization scares the pants off of every software company, but they're all aware that they have to figure it out because it's where everybody's going.
The scary new future.
But it's really fun to like mess with them. And it's really fun for like companies like Pivotal to like be coming up with new stuff, and Kubernetes and the Google ecosystem. Like, there's some really fun stuff happening there. So it's going to find its way into big data, machine learning and AI sooner than we think.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting on trend.
Cory, I so appreciate this, and I want to give you a chance to say, if somebody's interested in joining the podcast, how can they get involved?
Yeah, so bigdatabeard.com is our website.
Okay.
But you can find the podcast on pretty much any podcasting app. It's in iTunes, it's in Google Play. If you have an Amazon Echo at home, you can say, Alexa, play the latest episode of the Big Data Beard podcast.
Gosh.
And then, boom, you're in there.
She is great.
She's delightful. Subscribe now. Oh, we also have a YouTube channel.
Oh, no
Big
way.
Data Beard. Yeah, check it out. We've had the team, so some of the team went through like the Stanford machine learning course, the 16-week machine learning course, and they did like weekly recaps to talk about kind of their progress in it.
That'd be cool.
We've got some video content from the blogs as well, or podcasts as well.
Awesome. Well, when you are interested in sharing your tech confession, please go to techconfessionstheshow.com.